Welcome, Sylvia. It's so nice to have you back here in Timeless Textiles. This is your fourth exhibition, isn't it?
I know. Wonderful. And this one is probably the most, it's really not about textiles, it's about something completely different.
It's about you.
It's about me and my journey. Yes, it is. Well, it's always a bit about a journey, but this is kind of a particularly personal one.
This is very much a recovery, isn't it?
It's absolutely a recovery. Yeah.
So handstand. Let's talk a bit about handstand.
Okay.
Where did the title come from for you?
The title came from I had an incident where I had a fall, a very serious fall, where I basically wrecked my left hand. I'm left-handed, and broke my back. It was such a terrible injury that they tried to put it all together with lots of pins and plates, and then it collapsed, and so they had to go in again, and it was months of repair. And my biggest fear was that I wouldn't be able to work having my left hand gone, and probably more worrying was that I wouldn't be able to draw. And I think it's interesting when it comes down to it, even though you've explored lots of different mediums, from felt making to a bit of sculpture to painting, but it was drawing that was kind of the thing that was eating away, that I really was, fearful of not being able to do. So once, I got over the initial trauma and being totally immobilised by it, and I'm still in a brace and a cast, I attempted to make some marks. First of all, I tried, and everybody said, well, you'll just have to use your right hand. And I tried that, and it kind of worked, and it was good, but there was something, a connection with my left hand that I kind of started making some marks again, using both initially. But as the pain settled down and it became a little bit more settled, I just kind of got into using my left hand. And it was my saviour in that time. It was the place that I could go and recover, that I didn't think about what I was doing. This was purely about sitting down with some implements that I had, not a lot, and just some board, and starting to make marks. And also because of my background in teaching people that have some serious mental health issues, it just came home to me that that's what, it's what I teach, and that's what I need to go back to, and it works. It works. It was the place that gave me relief. It was a sanctuary. The more I got into it, the more I started experimenting, doing different things that I perhaps hadn't done before, working a lot with watercolours, using rags, being very, very experimental, and coming back to mark making. And so a lot of these landscapes are purely just starting with a mark and seeing where it took me. Some I would put up from a distance and live with, and then come back in, paint over the top, then come back in, rub it back, something else appeared. They are a real process. Some happened very quickly and I thought, that's it, I don't need to do anything more with that, and others have hours, but it didn't matter.
And does this series reflect your movement through your recovery? Are there phases in this show?
There probably are. Some of these very neutral ones, and kind of experimenting with mark making with the watercolours are probably the most early one, the earliest ones, and probably more the landscape fairly random, if you like, in the mark making, the earliest ones. And then I used to draw faces when I was a kid.
When you were 8?
When I would, as soon as I could draw, I would draw faces. I'd draw queens, I'd draw horses, and all these things. And often I would draw in books, novels that had a blank piece of paper. I would fill it full of drawings, and I would make it up in my head, the story, and I would draw the pictures to go with the story, and I would add people in. So it never occurred to me to ever start drawing faces, and often the faces that I drew would be of women, and they'd probably be, you know, beautiful looking women. And I suppose where my journey is now about, you know, being creative and trying to get some feeling across, I thought I could try doing some faces, which is what I love to do, but with something about them, with a presence about them. And that was my attempt to go at each one, you know, live with it for a while, to try and get some kind of feeling there. I don't know, I didn't actually come up with a feeling, but I just look at them and I think, well, no, that's not really working, and it's a bit flat, and then come back in again. So I would work on them. Some of them I just rubbed over with wet cloth and kind of loosened the whole thing up when it felt like it was becoming tight, and then going back in again and working. So as again, it's the same process. Some happened very quickly and others have been worked on. Some of them have been completely painted over and started again.
So do you think that you've built yourself together again by going back to faces and now going into faces and working with faces in this recovery? Because it's an interesting connection that's what you first did, was to draw faces, and here faced with having to really find your creative
yes, I don't know. I think that in some regards, the not thinking too much about where it comes from, and just going into being, rather than trying too hard to come up with something. It just sort of happened in a fairly organic process, I think. And, you know, I started drawing some faces, and then it just felt right that I should do it. And then your offer to have this exhibition here, and initially I thought, well, these don't have a theme. They, you know, they're not textile driven. You know, there was a reluctance. But then, you know, the more I got into it, and with your encouragement, Anne, the more I thought, well, it is about a process, and it's about not being precious, you know, pushing through things and letting go. So this is about letting go, really. And also letting go of, because, you know, I'm left with a disability, if you like, in the respect that I probably only have 30% function left in this hand. You know, I have no strength. I won't be able to felt. If I stitched using certain movements, because it's been fused, it's going to be an issue. So this is probably where I will move, but who knows? It may be something else, and that's the wonderful thing about any part of a journey for a creative person is being open to possibilities, change. Don't cut yourself off from anything.
Sylvia, I think these have got a very different style than the faces. Would you like to talk a bit about these techniques that you've used?
Well, these certainly are the earliest ones. I have been one where I've worked on very graphic works before, where I've come in on things and they've been very intricate. So I suppose this is a reflection of some of these works here, where I've, you know, build up a background, and then I come in and have a look at that background and respond it with some image over the top. Others, this one here is being outside and looking at some rocks and been inspired and working fairly quickly with mark making. This one here is starting off with a pencil sharpener and then just loosening the whole thing up. So I had an image that I worked with to start off with and then just started adding things. So it comes down to that zone that you have to get into to work out what's working as far as a composition goes. Putting it back, working it forward. What is it that you're going to focus on as far as it being what part of the image do you want to work on? But coming from that classical arts background, it's making sure that with all your work that there's no real flat areas, that you know there's interest, that when you go into something that you perhaps want to spend a bit of time with it and work your eye around. And so hence this one, which I did, is the grid of some lattice work on a window, and these are all the power lines underneath a house where I was drawing. So I've scored into, put a white background on, I've scored into making those marks and then come over with lots of graphite and Prismacolor pencil and also with some watercolour.
Because we're all faced with, we can be faced with traumas, but what is it that when you reflect back on that you would encourage other people to think, well, what have you learned about it?
And that one is look after your practice. Treat it with great respect and don't load it up with the head getting in the way. That ultimately it's about your eye, and it's that looking and that observation and recognising beauty, texture, form, strength in an image, recognising it, and that it's not so much about your physical self, it's all up here. And it came home to me so strongly, and because of it, you know, I've gone back into my workplace, and I know that having gone through this experience and knowing the power of it, I always have been, but I am far more committed to the process of making and how important it is. And even though we all like to achieve, have a successful work when we do something, or that we you know put it out there, and it's, but really the only way that you can ever move forward is to make and to stay in the process as much as you can. Because if you don't, and you load it up with any kind of thing about whether it's good or it's bad, that's where your head is getting in the way of a creative path that can happen when you get into a zone, when you find yourself in that zone. And that's what happens when I sit down and I did these works, and I still do these works, that I sit down and I start making my marks or whatever influence that I've got around, and I start with some mark making. And then 2 or 3 hours later, or maybe it's 3 hours later, or maybe it's 15 minutes later, but I've gone in, you know, there's a relaxation that has to occur because you actually change over. It's a different part of your brain that clicks in, and that's where that zone is. It's a sweet zone, and it's a wonderful thing. I think I've always created, and it is such a natural part of who I am. I mean, from early childhood, whether I made dolls' clothes or whether I drew or whatever, and then, you know, the formality of going to art school and you know, to teaching, it's always been a part of me. So I don't think I could not do it. I think, you know, after a while you you train your eye. You know, you see things you get excited by just walking down the street. Not all the time, but sometimes I'll drive home from work and I'll look out and I'll see the sky, and I just love to see those things. I get such pleasure out of it. And so, you know, having given that thing of, you know, always looking, it kind of then comes back into your work. There's a quality that comes back into your work, I think, just by constantly doing and constantly looking. The name handstand comes from this recovery process, so it's my handstand of working through, and it's not so much about my hand, it's about my head.
Sylvia, thank you so very much.
Oh, you're
what
welcome,
a treat to
Oh,
have you here. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Anne, for, I know that this is a textile gallery and you've gone out on a limb here, and I'm very grateful because it's been a very good process for me to do that. But I'm hoping that in doing that it just encourages people to constantly make, and that's what it's about, and I'm sure that's what you're about as well with your fabulous gallery.
Thank you. Making and playing.
Making and playing.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.